So, welcome to this Cambridge Marketing College webinar. My name is Neil Wilkins, and I'm one of the tutors at the college focusing specifically on artificial intelligence and how it impacts on marketing and communications. In this particular webinar, we're going to talk about GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, otherwise known as AI Search Optimization. Now, this is a very hot topic for marketers, communicators, business owners, and anybody responsible for a website. We are now moving into a very, very different world where search, in other words, how our organizations, our brands, our products and services are found, are no longer just restricted to humans. Search is now going to come through a variety of different means and methods and a lot of different intentions because robots and artificial intelligence don't necessarily search in the same way that humans do. So this is what we're going to be focusing on today, is how to make your content visible in a voiced and AI-driven search world. Now, this doesn't mean that traditional search engine optimization, the likes of appealing to Google, for example, is now obsolete. It isn't. But what we are seeing is a real blend of search traffic now coming from agents, so the likes of ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc., as well as actual humans. So we've got to really take this stuff seriously. So in this session, we're going to explore the fast evolving field of GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, and how AI assistants, conversational agents, and generative search platforms are now reshaping how your website and how your digital footprint is discovered. So take this thing seriously and you will find competitive advantage. So we're going to identify and really go deep into some of the definitions of this new kind of currency that we're trading with now, and also what you can do today to prepare for tomorrow's search landscape. Because it is changing. The old traditional SEO is moving away, moving aside, and this new world is evolving in front of us. So we're going to look at how AI-powered search differs from the traditional SEO. We're going to learn some principles of this new AI search optimization, AIO or GEO. We're going to apply some techniques that we are seeing establishing in front of our very eyes. There's no true playbook on this one yet. It is evolving, but we do see some best practice emerging to improve visibility in AI-generated search. And we're going to build a future-ready content optimization plan for AI-driven discovery. Now, a lot of this stuff is coming from a lot of research reports that are coming through from the likes of HubSpot, Gartner, Google, and of course the college itself. So we're looking into this really deeply and monitoring and seeing the trends as they begin to appear and emerge in front of us. And you'll probably have seen this yourself when you look at your Google Analytics in terms of your website traffic. You'll see some of the originating sources now will very, very likely be the likes of ChatGPT. So if you're not aware that it's happening, you need to get aware because it genuinely is across all sectors. And in lots of ways, depending on who you ask and which piece of research and actually which sector is being referred to, between 6 and 8% of search now, and that's as we listen to this right here, right now, between 6 to 8% of search is now coming through AI search in its whole sort of broader kind of meaning and the different versions of it. So that's incredible, isn't it? You think, it's only going to be a matter of months before this becomes a really significant route in to your organization and into your business. So really important that we get a grasp of this. So what do we kind of literally come from? Where did we actually start this thing? Because everybody knows the phrase SEO, search engine optimization. And very much in the first kind of 10 years of SEO, going back to the mid 2000s, it was basically that you had some good keywords, you got a few backlinks, so links back to your website, you put in some metadata, so some of the tags and sort of alt text and all those things behind the scenes, and you kind of sat there and you were hopeful that the search engines would pick you up. So it was very much a sort of quite a static way to do SEO. And some of those things still apply today. But between 2015 and 2025, we saw the emergence of something called semantic SEO, where it was much more about the meaning and the intent behind the content than it was the kind of the tags and the stuff that sat behind. And the algorithms through the likes of Google began to change and emerge. And what we saw was that things like thought leadership became really important. So if you could be identified as consistently publishing around a particular topic and you could be seen as very professional, having high intent in terms of really owning a topic and being, really thorough, really kind of, sort of honest about a particular topic, you would be rewarded alongside all of that kind of back office kind of stuff in terms of keywords and metadata. So it began to become a lot more about the feeling and the thinking behind content as much as it was the tagging, if you like. And now things are moving on to the next level. So from 2026 onwards, what we are seeing is GEO. Okay, so SEO is still there, undoubtedly, in many, many examples. It will be there for a long, long time. But GEO is the new kid on the block, Generative Engine Optimization. And this is visibility within AI generated answers, summaries, and chat responses. Because if you use something like ChatGPT to go off and find some information on the web, it isn't going to be looking necessarily at topic clusters and intent-based content, and it certainly isn't going to be looking at the metadata and the keywords and stuff. It's actually reading the site. It's actually looking at the site and seeing how useful it is, that it's going to help in the AI's kind of answer to you, which is summarizing all the best things it can find. So rather than just listing a whole host of search results and leaving you as a human to kind of sift your way through them, it's actually amalgamating all of the best bits and saying, this is the kind of answer to your question. So I'm not just leaving you with 1,000 search answer or search lines that you then have to go and click on and find out more. That seems just so archaic now, because what AI is doing is saying, look, I'm bringing to you the best of the best bits. And that is about answers to frequently asked questions. It is about summaries that are really useful, bite-sized chunks of information. It is about the fact that there's conversational content going on a website. That is what the AIs are looking for. That's what the agents, that's what ChatGPT, when it searches, is looking for, is the content relevance, easily digestible information. That's what it's after. So it's not saying the other stuff isn't important, but this is a new kind of search ecosystem. So traditional search engines are now coexisting with, and they obviously were there to serve humans, but they're now coexisting with AI assistants, with generative search experiences, and with voice interfaces too. So there's these new three kind of ways that we are now searching. We're letting our AI assistants like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot go off and find things for us. And we don't expect 1,000 results. We expect one result that's carefully thought through. That's important. We're seeing generative search experiences coming through things like Perplexity, which is my favorite in terms of actually going and doing deep research on a particular topic. So I'm doing some work with a client and maybe who are exploring a new marketplace and I don't know that marketplace, then I will get Perplexity to go and do some deep research. And I don't expect a host of different, things I then have to go and click on and go and read. I want a summary. So these generative search experiences are collating information from the best sources. Hopefully, you're going to be one of those, and then presenting that answer to their human. That's what's going on. And of course, the voice interfaces, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, make it also super interesting because if you think about when you're using a voice interface, Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant, whichever one is your favorite, whichever one you've got, in the little boxes around your home or your office and you're talking to them. Of course, those are much more conversational. And conversation, when it comes to this new form of search, is also really interesting because a lot of us now are not typing in our search questions. We're not asking for our AIs to go and research something by typing it in. We're actually talking to it. We're getting into a bit of a conversation with Perplexity, ChatGPT, and whatever. And we're actually getting into a conversation verbally. So this kind of voice search is also a very interesting one because it's a lot more conversational. It's a lot more kind of hybrid, which is a word I'm finding I'm using a lot, where there's this blend between AI and human. And so the thing is changing. The way that we approach search is changing, and the way that then we have to respond as owners of websites, for example, we then have to respond to that conversational approach. We can't just think people are searching and we're going to be ranked in position 4 in the list and they're going to come and click on that because we're in position 4. That's gone or it's going. What we're feeling now is that we have to be part of a conversation around a number of different topics. I'm going to come on to how you respond to that in a bit. So the first part I want to kind of cover with you is really understanding GEO and AIO. So GEO, what is it? Well, it's Generative Engine Optimization, and this focuses on influencing how AI systems discover, interpret, and surface your content in the responses that they generate. Because, of course, they're going to generate one response for their human. Okay, so the AI system's coming in, looking at you and seeing if you're sort of worthy of being included in how it summarizes the answer for its human. So it's looking at SEO, it's looking at AIO, and it's looking at what we call credibility systems or signals. So the credibility thing is kind of how reliable is the content on your site? I mean, is it very standalone or is it being reviewed? Do you have a bit of a community there going on? So it's kind of part of a discussion, which again gives it credibility. You know, how much is your content trusted, for example? And of course, in a microsecond, it can look at your content and then go elsewhere and see where your content appears in socials, in community groups, and in other conversations. How often is it referenced? Those kinds of things add a lot to credibility. And of course, this stuff doesn't happen at a human speed. You know, for us to go and do that probably takes a good hour. For an AI to go in and do it, it's happening within a microsecond. So we've got to rethink how this stuff actually works because it isn't on human terms. It is very much robotic. And you could argue it's kind of almost to the point of it's automated. It works faster than we can actually conceive. So the goal here for GEO and being relevant to these searches that are coming through from these robots, if we want to call them that, is to become part of the AI's training and retrieval ecosystem rather than just the search index. So we want to be a trusted partner to these AIs because it's really interesting when you use something like Perplexity, which gives you, the sources that it's used to come up with its answer. You can see all those sources, and if you use Perplexity, again, just as an example, a lot, you see that it does have reliable sources it goes back to first. So if you can be part of its little retrieval ecosystem, you can be a trusted partner to this large language model that is actually coming through and actually finding you constantly and consistently because you're just a good partner to it. You're providing information that's reliable, credible, and trustworthy. You're providing lots of it. It's really consistent. It's always around the same kind of theme, tone of voice, and it's robust and reliable. So it's going to come to you first. So once you build this relationship with these inbound searching AIs, then this is here to stay, and that's why I'm so keen that you get into this early rather than just leaving it as another thing to do next month or the month after, because the people who get in early here, much like that initial wave of internet search back in the late 1990s, if you were first into play, you were very much rewarded for being early in the game. I think that's going to play out here too. So it's really important that we kind of get our heads around this really. So how does this then compare with the whole old tradition, if you like, of SEO? So the old tradition of SEO was, our goal really was to rank in the search engine results. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to appear on page one and we wanted to be kind of, sort of seen and visible, maybe high on page one, and you'd get all these kind of spammy kind of emails come through. We can help you get on page one of Google, blah, blah, blah. Now that's very, very old hat now because what we're looking to do with GEO and AIO is to be included in generated answers, as I've been describing. So our focus is less on keywords and backlinks and much more now on context, authority, and structured data, structured information that's just very easy for the AIs to consume. So the old medium was very much static web pages, which you could put in place and Google would come, it would crawl over your kind of website, it would find what was there, it would log it and say, okay, I might present that, in amongst 1,000 other results that I've also gone and crawled as well. GEO or AIO does not work in that way. It's much more about conversational and contextual sources of information. So, what we're saying here is keeping content up to date. And if you think of it, a great example is a frequently answered questions page because AI seems to just love those things because they're very easy to consume. Here's a question which might relate to the question from your human, and here's the question and here's the answer. And if you keep that updated, that page or that series of pages, and keep it very constant and current, then you are going to be rewarded here because it's looking for context, it's looking for updated conversational kind of content. And those questions and answers, that's very conversational. So that's what we're after here. So, how do these AI assistants actually source content? This is an important one, obviously. So, these AI models, we believe, of course, this is emerging stuff, but right here, right now, we believe they combine public data. So, that's web pages and forums with licensed data. So, information that's going out via publishers and maybe in partnerships, so kind of third party content with user provided context. So this is that kind of conversational chat input or reviews or comments. So that combination of those three things is what your AI assistants arriving at your website are looking for. They're looking for that public data. So, it's been referred to and it's been used elsewhere. It's licensed, so it's actually appearing in other different kind of partner or publisher formats. And it's also there being discussed. So it's really quite clear here because this is focusing on structured transparency. There's another little cliched phrase for you there, which basically means it's clear sources, contextual cues, which means it's consistent with the topic, and it's verifiable claims. That's what it's after. Because really what it wants to do is say, look, human, I've gathered here as I've gone in and searched on this question you've asked me. I've captured all of this information here. And actually, yes, yeah, Neil's website there, that's got some really good stuff that helps me answer the question. So I'm going to use that as part of my answer back to my human. That's what the AI is trying to do. So if you can be part of that conversation, part of that search, you're in a strong position. So, how are we going to do this then practically? So, it sounds kind of a good thing to do. It sounds kind of pretty relevant. It sounds like there is this kind of middle thing in between the human and your website now, and there is, it's an AI. So, how can we start to sort of build some best practice into our kind of GEO planning? Well, the first thing we can do is think of structured clarity. So, this is where we are going to include things like author name, publishing date, the update frequency. We're going to be using things like an article style focus, but we're going to do FAQs. We're going to have things like product information on there. We're going to particularly focus on things like how-to guides, how to use this product, how to use this product in a certain way with some Q&A kind of style follow-up in the article. And those kinds of things appear very, very, very strong in the way that GEO will rate the relevance of your page. So that's the first thing that we can do. The second thing we can do is what we call topical authority. This is principle 2. So building deep expertise on themes, not keywords. Now, I love this one because this one plays right into my happy zone, which is owning particular topics and being a real kind of, and I'm going to use the phrase again, I used it at the start of this talk, but being a thought leader on one or two, or maybe three, it depends obviously how big a brand you are, but if you're a solo business owner like me, it would be kind of one or two topics that you go deep into and you build expertise on themes, not just the keywords. So you interlink related content that you've got. So you might have an article that you're publishing, and we've just described how that will be kind of published and the kinds of things you want to include in there, the Q&A, structured data, that kind of thing. But also here, then, you're going to then cross-reference other content that you've got on your site based around that same topic or that same thought leadership kind of subject. So what you're doing is you're building this little ecosystem of really useful information because, as I say, within a fraction of a second, the AI will come in, it'll say, this is a good article. Now, this is really relevant. What other stuff has it got around? Oh, right. Okay. Well, this is a reliable source. They're doing some really powerful stuff. So I like this. Yeah, this is really, really good. And it'll go and it'll read all of that stuff at the speed of light. I kid you not. And it'll then reference all the other content that you've got in there. So if you are demonstrating experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness on a topic, so you can choose the topic, you can have whatever topic you like, but taking that principle, the experience, the expertise, the authority, and the trustworthiness around a particular topic, ensure that every topic has what we call a pillar page linking to 3+ supporting articles. So if you look at your site and you look at the content that you've got on there, you should, within a particular pillar page, and this is, the article we're talking about right now, you should be able to link out to 3 supporting posts or articles that relate to that article. So what you're building is almost this little internal web of thought leadership topics and content. And that seems to build topical authority within the mind of, yeah, do AIs have minds? Well, maybe they do. They're certainly working in this way. But in their minds, that is a good, reliable source to gather the information from to then play back to their human. So topic authority is really important. Principle 3 here then is semantic relevance and context. So what we're doing here is when looking at not just repeating repetitively phrases and that kind of thing. So we're kind of almost trying to spoof stuff by saying, oh, if I say the same thing constantly, that'll help in my GEO. Well, that was very, very much old school. Actually, it was bad practice anyway, but very, very old school SEO from back in the day. What we're looking at now is optimizing for intent and meaning. So looking at related entities, people, places, events, etc. in the copy, using natural conversational phrases to match the voice and AI inquiries. So if you can think about what would an AI be searching for from a phrase that's been put into it by a human. So the human just wants to get a great answer out, not a series of search results. So what kind of phrase, if you think about your target audience, what kind of phrase, and I do mean really a phrase, what kind of things would they ask? And it probably is a question. So if you can be answering directly the questions that they'll put into their AI then comes out and searches based around that question, and you want to be part of the answer. So this use of natural conversational phrasing in your content is going to be key. So think when you look back at some of the content that you've produced recently, is it conversational? Is it very natural? Or is it a lot more technical, scientific, a lot more formal? Because that is not going to be attractive to an AI coming through to your site. So this doesn't mean we're going to become unprofessional. What it means is we're going to become probably, irrespective of environment or sector we're in, we're going to become probably a little more informal. So formal style content, technical style content is not what the AIs are looking for. They're looking for something that's going to help them answer the question that their human put in. So conversational type and conversational style content is going to be key. So have a look at what you're currently producing and just ask the question, is this directly relating to the style of question that my target human is actually putting into their AI? If the answer is yes, you're on target. If you think you can make it a little bit more informal and a little bit more answering questions that your humans would be putting in, then that is what you need to be focused on. Principle 4 in our listing here of GEO principles and best practice is content transparency. So if you can cite data sources really clearly, avoid unverified claims, don't just make random judgments or statements, make sure that if you're using stuff, you're tapping into verifiable claims. So if you're talking about a particular topic, and again, particularly with the thought leaders amongst us, what we need to be focused on is actually maybe just a small number of very very, very reliable sources from which we get our inspiration and quote those sources. Add external references and footnotes where possible. Declaring AI assistance as well when you're creating content, if it's relevant, will build trust signals. It's okay to use AI to help draft your content, but if you do, make sure that you're declaring it. Because from an AI's perspective, if it can see, oh, okay, this human's being honest when they put this article together, there's a little bit of content in here that sounds and looks a bit like it's AI created. Oh, but they've declared at the bottom in the footnote that this was, a hybrid article, hybrid as in human and AI created. Okay, that's great. Okay, I trust them a little bit more. So you've kind of gone up in their kind of level of expectation now. You're kind of a little bit more trustworthy. And a lot of transparency and guidelines like this are starting to emerge. So you can do a little bit of a search if you want to and find out how those things are evolving. But trust signals, content transparency is really, really key. Another one in principle 5 in GEO principles is conversational discovery. So all models, no matter which one you're looking at, will respond best to question-led content. So the things like how to, we've all tried this, haven't we? How do I do X, Y, or Z? Why does? Which again is very, very conversational style of query, isn't it? And of course, what is? These are all questions, but they're very much driven around this whole idea of FAQs and subheadings phrased as questions. These things can be very, very attractive to an AI because, even though it's going to be doing stuff at the speed of light, it just needs a little bit of a nudge, a little bit of help. So if you can be kind to it and say, hey, we've got some answers for how to do X, Y, or Z, or, why does this happen, or why does this work, or, what is X, Y, or Z? Oh, well, look, here's a thought leader over here, transparently, creating content that's just so easy for me to digest and feed back to my human. That's what we want to get into the mind of the AI. So if we can optimize for featured snippets and people also ask, results. Again, that's an interesting one because you'll know if you've ever done research with something like Perplexity or ChatGPT, you'll know that there'll be a follow-up suggestion of two or three things where it's like, okay, I've given you this answer, human. What would you like to do next? Because it wants to then sort of, keep that conversation going with its human. And wouldn't it be nice if you were actually part of that conversation of the next step? Because once somebody's getting into this little conversation with their AI, what they're doing is they're going deeper into the search and they're going to uncover more and more thought leaders. So if that's you, then you're in there. So it can be a very interesting way. Maybe you don't get the hit on the very first part of the search, but maybe you're there as part of the people also ask, or would you like to ask about this? Those little prompts that you get when you get that first set of results, you want to appear there too. Now, what we're also looking at is not only that kind of that conscious research that happens when somebody thinks, okay, I'm going to use my AI to come in and search on a particular question. And they write it down and they wait and they sit and they watch their AI doing all this amazing magic in front of them and producing a lovely result. A lot of the time now we're seeing, and at an increasing rate, optimization is required for voice. Now, these kinds of voice searches are very natural language because they are short, spoken style phrases. And a lot of the time, we're finding that they're very location based and near me queries because a lot of people do voice search on a mobile device. And a lot of the time, that implies they're away from base, they're away from home or away from office. So optimizing as well for location. I mean, location has been for the last 20 years a key part of search engine optimization, and it doesn't go away with VSO, voice search optimization. The fundamental is here that you want to be optimizing your Google business page profiles, any local listing, any kind of relevance to location or geography. That stuff, coupled with what we've just been talking about, is also really, really important. And your conversational kind of content design is all about creating content that anticipates your target humans' questions and starts to build a bit of a dialogue with them. So, structuring sections of your content, either in the articles that we're talking about or dedicated FAQ pages in more kind of conversational Q&A style blocks. That can be so, so helpful because you get this right. And particularly if you're going for a niche topic in your thought leadership or the things that you talk about, what you will provide if you do clear, logical flow and helpful answers in blocks, you could find that actually your answer, your page, the thing that you want your human to click on, is actually presented almost in its entirety by the AI back to their human. So, this kind of agent that's sitting between you and your customer, if you can get this absolutely clear and right, you stand a chance of maybe being the only search result that is actually presented back to the human. So there's a real reward here for taking time because not only are we not worried now about search ranking results, in other words, what position am I against all my competitors, you can actually gazumba everybody. I mean, literally everybody on a topic if you can follow these principles and these rules. So how do you increase your chances of kind of really being cited by these AI assistants and actually getting to that kind of only a number one choice? Well, this generative answer optimization is all about explicit key takeaways or summary boxes. So very much fact-based, concise sentences. Provide statistics and source attribution, as we've said before, so reliable sources and stuff. Maintain content freshness. So if you put things into little blocks, very Q&A kind of focused, easy to read if you're human, but also even easier to read if you're an AI, and you keep it up to date, so regular updates, just changing a few words here or there, maybe changing the reference sources, maybe just updating some dates and things, and publishing in accessible, crawlable formats. HTML, basic words on a page rather than image text. Image text can be found, but it's just that little bit harder for the AIs to do it. So they can do it, they can certainly see and read images, and there's no doubt about that. But what we want to do is make their life as easy as possible. So actual text really works. But those little key takeaways, those summary boxes, FAQs, there's a real pattern here, isn't there? Conversationally presented back. This is what we're after here. And so there are many kind of little tools and stuff that you can use. I mean, for topic analysis, you can use Phrase or Market Muse. For schema, you've got Merkle, Inlinks. Content scoring, you've got ClearScope, Surfer SEO. Predictive visibility, you can use Beacon AI. That's a good one. And for AI assistant tracking, you've got Perplexity AI results or alerts. So you can actually use some of these tools to kind of rate where you are today and just kind of do an audit on your site and then watch the progression by plugging some of these things in and then maybe a month or two down the track, see where you've got to. And these things will actually enable you then to fill any gaps, make little kind of incremental improvements as you go. As long as you're following those basic principles, you're going to be in a really good place. So this is all about constantly updating and improving. As we think about these tools and technical optimization, it's all about using Google Search Console for classic indexing. Yeah, absolutely. But then using AI engine trackers. I mean, new tools like Hoppy Copy, AI visibility tools to see where the brand appears and see where this kind of thing is going to incrementally increase. And you can create alerts for any mentions in ChatGPT using the Pulse feature there. If you've got a paid ChatGPT account, Google Gemini, which is I would always advocate as a good one to kind of see how your brand is or isn't appearing for particular search results. Because Google Gemini itself is kind of the big daddy of search. Obviously, it's Gemini being Google's new form of search, so it is absolutely front and center the place where you want to be appearing. And of course, as I've mentioned a few times, Perplexity as well. So you can actually do this testing yourself in a real world sense, as well as obviously Google Analytics behind the scenes to enable you to kind of really see where those results are coming through. And of course, what we're doing here is we're using these AI agents not only to kind of test out the reality of what we see, but also report things back to us. And of course, for most of us, it is going to be in the written word, but also we don't need to or shouldn't really be ignoring the other stuff as well. I would always say start with the written word. This is the one that is, I think, at the moment going to give you the best return in the shortest possible time. But we also do need, in due course, to be planning in optimization of video, of audio, of visual, and including, transcripts with our videos, including descriptive titles and closed captions for any videos that we host. In audio, tagging podcasting, for example, with rich metadata, that's really important. And there are all these dashboards are available to enable you to do this. You don't have to kind of go technical on this. Every time you put something into maybe a podcast that you've hosted through something like Spotify's podcasters dashboard, you're encouraged to put in rich metadata there so that it's very easy for the AIs to find. And with visual, still adding descriptive alt text and file names that accurately show what is in the picture is really important for image recognition systems. And a lot of AI will be looking at and reading the images without actually viewing the images. So all of those things are still really, really important, and that stuff hasn't gone away. It's still there very much, front and center for us to do. But I would say, because there is a lot to do here, if this is new to you, there's a huge amount here to do. So I would say start with the words and then go video, then go audio, and then go visual. That is the order of play, in my humble opinion, that will give you the best return at the fastest possible pace. Begin with the words, that conversational thing. So let's get a little bit of a step-by-step plan in place here as we're starting to kind of pull all of these ideas and this thinking together. And this might be something you want to press pause if you're watching this on catch up, press pause and rewind and go back and sort of really reflect on, because we've moved very fast through what is quite a complex thing to do. But some of the basic principles are going to hold true no matter how you look at this. So our little step-by-step GEO plan is very much to audit existing content for the structure and the transparency that we've talked about. So is it conversational? Is it kind of, well structured with a sort of an FAQ style? Is it going to be easy and very much sort of blocky kind of content for the AIs to pick up? Add schema and structured data markup, as we've been talking about. Again, that's important. It's probably not quite as important as the actual written word on the page, but it is important in terms of the back end so that it gives that kind of credibility and reliability score for the AIs, which will look at that in a very, very sort of short period of time. Revise your copy, anything that you've existingly published for conversational queries and clear answers. If you need to rewrite a bit of the stuff that you've written recently and kind of put it into maybe a more conversational spin, or maybe add a Q&A bit at the end of an article, that could be quite a neat way of doing it, because that's in effect a new piece of content coming into an existing article, which will tick the box of that content refresh. So maybe that's a nice quick win for you. If you haven't already, cite sources and add updated references. Again, that could be a footnote to an existing article. So you don't necessarily have to think, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to write a load of new stuff. You could actually add little supplemental additions to each article that you've written recently. That could be super powerful in terms of the optimization. And again, a very quick win. And see the difference, the before and after. Does a particular article versus one that's quite similar on your site, does this now start to perform better? Keep a little log of how those things are going. Watch the graphs in Google Analytics. My prediction will be, if you do this stuff, it's going to start to improve on that graph. Obviously, optimizing across formats, text, video, and audio, that can be, something you then sort of attend to once you've done the other bits. But I would say, as part of your little GEO plan, is to monitor performance monthly and iterate. There are lots of ways that, you can improve this stuff, but you do have to keep a close eye on it. So I would always advocate starting small, maybe just with one article or two articles, and watch the difference, the before and after, that difference that you make by doing some of this stuff or adding this kind of information in. That's going to get really interesting. Practical information or implementation that you can do here is a content refresh workflow. I mean, maybe export top 20 performing URLs and actually run those to identify some gaps in your content through something like Phrase, for example. It will give you then phrase phrase will give you then some options to then sort of go away and play with. Maybe then you're going to update and play with some titles, maybe the metadata, maybe see the performance before and after of your FAQs or any kind of schema that you've got in there. And you can then use ChatGPT Advanced Data Analysis tool. So if you use the data analytics, my GBT in the GPT store, you can compare before and after rankings. So you can plug your data from Google Analytics in and say, can you give me a deep analysis on actually how this has changed or hopefully improved, but changed the performance of this piece of content? And it will then feed back the intelligence, which allows you then to improve again and again and again. Not only that single article, but all of the articles that you have. And so you can actually begin to build this as a really good habit. It's a really good thing that you can really start to sort of see a huge impact on your website traffic by doing this. And I'm doing some work with a couple of clients at the moment in this very, very field and looking at this quite deeply each month. And it is fascinating to see. You only see initially, you'll only probably see little incremental improvements. And you think, oh, it's not major. I spent quite a bit of time doing it. The reward will come. The reward, if you're patient, will come because, of course, that kind of content doesn't grow old. That kind of content, because you're keeping it fresh, will continually, incrementally get better and better and better in the search rankings, these new search rankings. So be patient and trust the process does work. Simple example of a GEO ready piece of content would be something that has a header. Like if it was me, I would be doing an article, say, on what is ethical AI in marketing. Then I do an intro, so a short definition, because of course AI will detect the brevity, the short punchy little phrase which says, okay, this article is about, in this intro, it is about what the header says. Then I'm going to do a subheading one is why it matters. I'm going to add some statistics and maybe a source or two. The subheading two for that section is going to be key challenges. I'm going to put in a bullet list here, which is, what to think about when it comes to ethical AI in marketing. Subheading three then could be how marketers can act. So some actual practical steps. And of course, this is where the FAQ bit kind of comes in because you're actually answering what a marketer could do against those challenges, which are often going to be the questions that are posed. So do you see what's happening here? You're actually building an article in a very constructed way that actually is both good to read, super practical for the human, but really helps tick the boxes of what we've been talking about. At the end, a clear conclusion, a clear summary and next steps enables the AI to think, oh, actually, this is quite a good article, but if I was to reference this, because they've included the next steps, I might grab some of those and put those in as possible next steps for my human to click on. And of course, if the human then does click on those, they come to your website. The schema, of course, is the FAQ at the bottom and the article markup and everything else that's going to go on behind the scenes. So just good tags and good references. And again, that consistency for me, this would be a great little article topic because one of my thought leadership things is AI marketing. So if I've got what is ethical AI in marketing, it really kind of is one of those pillar pieces of content that I would be able to then cross-reference with other content of a similar nature on my site. So it becomes a win in itself, but it's also then benefiting other content in this thought leadership topic on my site. Now, of course, you're probably not going to be going down this particular topic route, but you've got to think about what is the linkage between the content that I want to publish now in this new way and the stuff that we've already got on our site. Because if you can start to create these little webs of content, start to link together topics of a similar nature, then you're going to be creating this little ecosystem that the AI can come in and see. And then they can think, wow, this brand or this particular website is so consistent. They're always about this particular thing. I'm going to go deeper. And in a fraction of a second, they've read your whole site and they know then that they can trust you and they will come back. And of course, once you start doing this, it is about being practical because, if you're working particularly in a larger organization or a larger marketing team, or you've got an agency or maybe a web company, it is about integrating and collaborating as well with them. Because if they're not aware of this, they could still be working to the old currency. So think about how you're going to introduce this to others as well. Maybe work with them to create some content kind of listings, maybe the kinds of things that you want to be talking about and sharing. Now you know that you are actually marketing to AI as well as to your end customer. Because you've got this kind of agent that sits between your customer and you now, potentially, and maybe work together to create a shared AIO, GEO playbook. Maybe as you learn stuff, maybe it isn't just you, maybe the agency can start to play with you on this one, and you actually build a playbook of best practice. How valuable would that be for the business, where you start to see, some patterns evolving, and you start to think every time we do this on a page, or every time we use this phrase, or each time we kind of go a little bit more conversational on this topic, things move in the right direction. There's something in there we all need to be doing. So you're building this sort of playbook as you go. And of course, that's a constantly moving thing. But how exciting would that be if everybody did it? Because then you're able to scale. Of course, key things like tone and structure guidelines is really important. And having a consistent keyword or question conversion list, which is now really what it's going to be, isn't it? Because we're doing FAQ focus, is going to be really important. So maybe discuss amongst you, because this shouldn't all probably lie on somebody's shoulders. This is going to be a collective thing. What kinds of questions are our humans interested in? Because if we know the pain points that our humans are facing, notice I'm not just saying customers here, it's the humans we're targeting, but it's also the AIs as well in this mix of focus. And what kind of questions are they looking to solve? Because that is our keyword or question conversion list. And then refreshing our schedule. Each and every time we learn something, we practice something, we explore something, we uncover something, refreshing our schedule. Because we can then change our existing content and adapt our upcoming content with these key learnings. And so what we're doing here is then we're kind of embedding these sort of GEO checkpoints into our editorial schedule or calendar. And this would be a really good way of doing stuff is, add this new line in. Don't just think about, oh, I've got to publish this piece of content, this article or this social media post. Stop and think, okay, little GEO flag then pops up. Is this actually going to contribute or is it going to take us one step backwards? Are we just publishing because, well, it's the time of the month or the time of the week that we always publish? Or are we actually thinking this is moving us in the right direction? And if the answer is yes, then it's time to publish. It's time to then improve. It's time to then feed that back into our plan. So this is going to be a new habit that we are building here. And as we build this habit, it's about what is important to us. Well, it's going to be the things like inclusion in AI answers. That is going to be a KPI, a key performance indicator. It is going to be content citations. How many times can we see link backs in AI outputs? That's going to be a key thing that we need to find out. How many times do we see improvements in engagement metrics, things like click-through rates or dwell time on a particular article? Because if an article was showing a dwell time of just, I don't know, 45 seconds, and we've now seen it go up to 1 minute 15, that's a significant input or increase to our engagement on a particular article. And it might just be because we attended to the assistants or the agents that were coming to our site on behalf of the human. That might be the sole reason why engagement's gone up. Visibility, AI snippet presence. When you do a search on your own kind of content, do you appear in the AI snippet on Google Gemini, for example? Do you appear in that little paragraph that appears at the top of Google search now? Yeah, okay, Google's still going to present you with a million answers that you can then click through, but do you appear in the snippet at the top? That's a key performance indicator if ever I saw one. So these are always things that you can just have a little watching brief on and come in as though you're the AI. Use an AI to come into your site, do a search on your site or point it towards your site with ChatGPT and see what it comes back with. You can play the role of your target human, your target customer, your target competitor and see what happens. It's a fun game to play and it will uncover a lot of surprises, I can absolutely guarantee you. And so the measuring of the success is really important. Reporting and focusing on continuous improvement is key here. Making sure that you create a dashboard that actually talks about not just your website performance from a traditional SEO perspective, but now you can include generative engine optimization. You can document what content gets surfaced most often. You can start to learn which are the questions that actually these AIs are searching for that actually get answered the most. And then you can start to analyze that and see patterns and then maybe go deeper onto those particular topics. Remember, if you are focusing on thought leadership, you've got to be constantly having your finger on the pulse because you can then feed back any learnings into your plan. So your plan is no longer, oh, we do that once a month. No, this is a daily feed. If you're doing it once a quarter, no, that's a monthly feed. If you only do it once a year, you got to bring that back to quarterly. So at the very least, you're improving the frequency and the amount and the volume here because there's a real competitive advantage to be had here if you're willing to invest time and energy in this. Super exciting. It does require you to spend some time with it, but if you just follow those principles that we talked about before, you will be in a strong, strong position. So, some key takeaways. What do you need to focus on next? Well, my view is that you're going to be focusing from ranking to referencing. That's a key thing. Forget for now just what position do we appear in Google rankings and think how often are we actually referenced? So, optimize for inclusion, not just position. Get a focus now from keywords into context, designed for meaning and intent. So think of those thought leadership topics and go deep onto them. You want to be identifiable for particular topics that are relevant to your brand and your products and services. So always, always have those front of mind. Think about from web to everywhere. So ensure that you are discoverable through multiple modes. So through voice, through text search, through human search, obviously they're still there, but also through AI search. Just be thinking all the time about discoverability. How can we be discovered? How can we improve? And think about your content as moving from static to a living asset. And by that, I mean refreshing it regularly with data-driven updates, putting new answers to existing questions in, maybe changing or updating some reference sources. You can continually improve your content. And of course, you've got AI to help you doing that. And if you do use AI, make sure you reference the fact that this was with a little help from my AI friend, because the AIs that are coming into search will think, oh, okay, yeah, he's one of us. She's one of us. Yeah, this is all good. AI search has redefined visibility for your brand and its digital footprint. It truly, truly has. I'm seeing this already appearing across every single sector that I engage with. So your content now has got to be trustworthy and trustworthy enough to be cited. It's got to be clear enough to be read by machines and human enough, of course, to connect with the audiences that those machines work for. So whilst the agents are agents coming to you on behalf of humans, ultimately you can't lose sight of the humans. So think of this from blending both human interest as well as AI interest as well. And if you can kind of get that sweet spot, this is why I keep using the phrase, this is hybrid search. This is hybrid optimization because you're actually appealing both to machines and to humans in equal measure all the time. So GEO requires that your brand now has become or needs to become part of the conversation. So it is the conversation around those topics and those subjects which are going to be really important for you strategically into the future. And that to me is your initial focus for AI search optimization and the wonders that are GEO.